Hey everybody, welcome to ChorderClub. Are you confused between Trigrams and Instagram? Well, I gotta tell you, only one's gonna speed up your typing skills, and I'll give you a hint. It's not the one with filters. Let's get started. In today's video, we're talking all about trigrams, which can be thought of as building blocks for words. We're going to be talking about muscle memory and how you can build it and some of the psychology behind it. And we're going to go into the Trigrams Tier on .io, and we're going to talk about some techniques that you can use to practice certain trigrams and master your device. So what is a trigram? Well, to put it simply, a trigram is simply a set of three characters that are part of a word. I think it's going to be really easy to understand what I mean by just showing an illustration. So I'm going to share my screen here, and let's take a look at the word typing. So we've got here the word typing. The first trigram of the word typing is TYP, and it's a trigram because there's 1, 2, 3 letters in a row. Now, the second trigram in the word typing is YPI. And then the third is, of course, PIN. And then the last is ING. Now, these trigrams are what are basically building up the word. And you can practice specific trigrams to get better at typing them. The reason why you might want to do that is because these trigrams are common occurrences and building blocks that make up other words. So, for example, let's take ING. You can think of ing, you could probably think of a ton of words that end in ing. For example, being, or during, or things. So there's lots of different words. In fact, if you think about it, you can probably come up with a ton of words that end in ing. I've put up some here on the screen, but I bet you can think of even more. So by learning how to type ing and how to type it really well, you're going to be able to improve your speed at typing all of these words just by practicing that little building block. That's the whole concept and idea about practicing trigrams. Now, your goal when learning how to type this trigram, in this case ing, is to really build it up into some muscle memory. Now, I say the word muscle memory, and I want to dive into that topic a little bit more. To illustrate this concept, I really want you to think about what it's like to first learn how to ride a bicycle. Initially, you're thinking about everything, about how to push the pedals, how to stay balanced, how to make sure that you don't fall. Eventually, you keep trying and you keep practicing, and over time, your body starts to sort of take over, and it just knows what to do. Sure, at times you might still have troubles and you might fail, but over time, the more and more times you do it, the better you become at riding a bicycle. And as you do it, your brain no longer really has to think about what it's doing, but rather it just does it. This idea of learning how to ride a bicycle and repeating it and moving that information, how to ride the bicycle, from your short-term memory into your long-term memory, what's happening is basically your brain is forming new neural pathways that are related to that specific task. And as we practice, we're solidifying those pathways so that they can stay there longer. And by having those, you're going to be more efficient and you're going to be able to do it better. So just like learning to ride a bike, touch typing on a device, whether it's a CharaChorder or any other keyboard, is similar. In order to be able to touch type without having to rely on any reference data, you really need to have some good repetition to form up and build those neural pathways. When we practice trigrams, our fingers start to remember these movements, and we're able to execute them over time without even thinking about it, or at least that's how it feels. Over time, our fingers are going to know exactly where to go and what order and how to do it, and you're going to be able to execute them really fast. Just like you know how on a bike, how to balance, how to pedal, and how to keep all of that going even though you don't have to think about it. By building up this muscle memory, we'll be on our way to typing at the speed of thought, which is what we're aiming to get everybody to do with their CharaChorder device. Now, those of you who watched the last lesson on the letters tier will recall that I said something along the lines of, in general, typing letters like this, just random letters, is not something that you're going to be really good at doing having random letters and typing those, that's just not something that you encounter on a daily. And that's not something that I do on a daily. And so I haven't really formed up that ability to do that, even though I know how to use my device very well. It is much better to spend time practicing and learning blocks of text, in this case trigrams, that appear more often in real-world typing. As you learn these, character entry or typing it letter by letter on your device is just going to become much easier for new words that you encounter that are using those same building blocks. Before we move into techniques on how to build up muscle memory, I really want to show you a couple of other common trigrams. I showed you ing and a few others as part of the word of typing, but I wanted to show you some other ones that are in the English language and just show you how there are very few common trigrams that really build up a bunch of different words. And I think you'll really get to see what I mean when I show you this. Now, these are just a few of the many, but there are lots of trigrams, and I think there's around 90 to 100 or so on .io that are on the platform for you to practice. So the, and, for, her, ter, hat, the, ere, you can see all of these and you can see how they occur in some really common words. And so these building blocks make up these words, and when you practice these building blocks, you're going to be able to type these words much faster as a result. So now that we know what trigrams are, let's talk a little bit about muscle memory and some techniques around it and maybe some of the psychology behind it. The first step to building muscle memory really starts with incremental learning. Now, imagine that you were about to climb your first set of stairs, okay? So you've never climbed stairs before, it's the first step. You're not gonna start off by trying to just start at the bottom and leap straight up to the top. No, rather what you're gonna do is you're gonna take it slow, you're gonna use the rails, you're gonna go step by step, and you're gonna take those small little incremental pieces and you're gonna try to achieve those one step at a time. You're gonna work on each step and you're gonna get better at climbing from step to step, and over time you're gonna be able to do that with more accuracy where you won't trip, more speed, you'll be able to do it a lot quicker, for example. And over time you might be able to start, for example, running up the stairs or maybe even skipping a couple of steps. Only as you start to incrementally learn and build up that individual skill on a single step. You can think of the trigrams as those individual steps. Now, the second step is that you really want to try to be consistently practicing. You're not going to be able to master your device overnight. That's just not going to happen. You're going to need to consistently practice to build up and strengthen that muscle memory. Just as you wouldn't try running a marathon without training regularly, don't expect your hands to be able to move around the device so quickly that you're typing really fast overnight. Now, the third step is that you really want to have some variety in your practice. You want to make sure you're getting different kinds of practice. With .io, there are a variety of tiers and modules that are going to expose you to different types of typing and practice for your device. But there's also other areas that you can use your device to start to learn how to use it and practice different methods. So, for example, writing emails with your device or chatting with your friends, all of those things are great ways to practice the device using something different and kind of giving your brain a chance to form those pathways in a different way. Now, when you are practicing, it's really important to focus on trigrams or text or words that are giving you trouble and less frequently practicing the ones that you're already really good at. This is a concept called space repetition, and I want to talk a little bit about it because it powers the algorithms behind .io. The basis for this space repetition lies in something called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. Now, if you've never heard of Ebbinghaus, Ebbinghaus was a German psychologist who really wanted to understand why do we as humans forget things and how can we prevent that. And so basically he did research and he produced a simple model which I'm going to show on the screen here. He produced a simple model which basically says that, our memory fades over time. So this is the forgetting curve. The information retained as a percentage, when you first learn it, it's really high in your short term. But as time goes on in the short term, it drastically drops off in terms of retention of the information as time goes on, and then it kind of levels off. And so space repetition, like what we use in .io, fights this natural tendency to forget. And it's basically taking advantage of a psychological spacing effect that, when spreading out repetition of learning, it gives your brain time to encode short-term memory into longer-term memory. And if we look at the same graph, we can kind of overlay later learnings and introductions to this information and show exactly what we mean by that. So if you first learn the information and then it drops off, but then you reintroduce that again at some time period after, then the rate at which you forget that one changes, and at the final amount of information you can retain. Now, this effect is why, for example, professors and teachers often tell you don't cram for a test, and it's also largely why our community will recommend people to say, hey, if you've got a set amount of time per week, it's much better to do smaller, short bursts of practice each day as opposed to one longer session, let's say like on the weekend. So for example, if you have 30 minutes a day, that is 3.5 hours over 7 days. It's much better to have that 30 minutes a day rather than 3.5 hours, because the amount of information and muscle memory that you'll be able to retain after that time is going to be much better when you space it out. Part of the reason why that happens is because when you take a break from practicing, for example, to end the night and get some rest, your brain is still working on those pathways. It's still actively trying to solidify the connections that you made during that practice session. There's this effect that a lot of people experience as new users, where they'll be really trying hard to break a new record or to learn a chord or to get some aspect of using their device down, and they'll get frustrated. They'll kind of end the day, they'll go to sleep, get a good night's rest, and then when they wake up, they're able to do the exact thing they were trying to do and frustrated about doing with ease. And that's because all of that practice while you're sleeping is still sort of solidifying, and it's giving your brain a chance to really encode that. I bet each one of you are going to have some similar experience at some point with your device. Now, I'm not a neuroscientist, so I can't necessarily go into all the details about the motor cortex and the cerebral cortex and neuroplasticity and how all this complexity works in the brain. But there's a lot of information out there, and you can go research it yourself if you'd like. From what I have been able to research, all the evidence points to working up to building your muscle memory for typing, and specifically for touch typing, is really important to being able to execute fast. The reasoning is because the fewer senses that the cerebral cortex of the brain has to use to do a task, the better. Think about it. If your brain has to use the sense of sight, looking down, use the sense of touch, have to think about how to spell a word, how to read some text, whatever it is, you have to do all of those things. Each of those add complexity and potential time into executing the task at hand. Once you build up the muscle memory, your brain doesn't need to use the sense of sight. It will know as soon as it sees a certain trigram the exact order that your fingers need to move. And in fact, as we move and get better at using our devices, eventually we're going to be able to do that with whole entire words, which is chording. So you'll have muscle memory built up for chording, and you're going to be able to output entire words as soon as you see them or as soon as your brain wants to type them. And that's really what it is when we say typing at the speed of thought. But we're not going to get there just yet. One step at a time, just like we were talking about earlier. Now, this video is focused on trigrams, so why don't we step into the Trigrams tier on .io and see how we can use it to our advantage. Now, like the letters tier on the CPM module on .io, the Trigrams tier is all about typing some of these trigrams that we've been talking about. And all of the features we talked about in the last video around the statistics and all of that stuff, that all still applies. So why don't we jump in and take a look, and we can talk about some of the features. Now, to get to the Trigrams tier, it is right after the letters tier under the CPM module. You just click on it, it'll open it up. You can open up your statistics so you can see the targeted trigrams. Some of these we recognize that I was showing earlier, the, F, 4, S, etc. And it's basically just going to be typing these trigrams. So you can go ahead and start typing these Don't forget that you can also show your device on the screen, CharaChorder Lite, CharaChorder 1, whichever device you're using. And you're going to want to start to build up the muscle memory for these. Now in the Trigrams tier, if you look over in your settings, the speed goal for each trigram is going to be 20 words per minute. So you can adjust that if you'd like to, but 20 words per minute is a good goal for these trigrams because you're really going to want to start to get fast at typing these. Now, there are going to be some trigrams that we encounter that are going to have double letters in them, and I want to specifically go ahead and find some of those so that I can show you all about the duplicate key. All right, so I found one of the trigrams that I wanted to talk to you about, and it is this ATT trigram. Now you'll notice that it has two letters that are repeated. That's the T, and CharaChorder devices have this feature that let you take advantage of that. So why don't we take a look at that? I'm going to go ahead and share Notepad, and I also want to share a camera of my device. Now to type ATT, you could type ATT. Okay, so you can type TT twice. It's not too bad. You just have to go down twice on that one, right? But one thing that you can take advantage of is you can use the duplicate key. Now the duplicate key on the CharaChorder 1 is right here. So you just have to press it inward or east. And so if you type AT duplicate, basically what the duplicate key is doing is it's just repeating the last input from the CharaChorder. So ATT. So I don't know if you can tell, but I'm able to much quicker type that trigram because all I have to do, well, that time I typed too many. All I have to do is just press the duplicate key. I don't have to reset my pointer finger and then type the TT again. So you're gonna encounter several trigrams like this, and you can use this technique called the duplicate key to make typing these a little easier. It's really cool. It's really fun when you get good at it for certain trigrams. It's very, very satisfying. Now the next technique that I want to show you, I've moved my camera slightly here so that you can see this key here, which by default has R, E, and space on it. And some of the trigrams that you encounter will make use of a feature called rolling. So when I was typing the AT, I could type AT and then I have to let go and then T. I showed you how you can use AT duplicate so that you don't have to reset it because that's reducing the amount of time that it takes to type that trigram. This concept is very similar with rolling. So if you have to type, for example, there, so E-R-E, okay, so I type T-H-E-R-E. What you can do for that E-R-E, it's a really nice trigram that you can roll. So what I mean by roll is, you can basically just roll your finger around the switch. So it's a little hard to see. Hopefully you can see it here, but you just kind of roll it around. So you don't let it go. You basically don't let go of the switch, and you just go down, right, down. And these exist all over the device. There's lots of trigrams that make use of it. A bigram that takes use of it, which is just 2 letters instead of 3, is the at. So when I was typing the ATT, I was doing ATT. You can actually just do the roll for that at. So then that's how it becomes really fast to type that trigram. So anyway, that's another technique that I want you to be aware of as you're going through the Trigram tier in .io, which let's take a look at that again, just to wrap it up. So again, this ATT, there are lots of them that you will encounter. You just saw that ER. And you're going to find new ones, and you'll probably point out some that I don't even know. The thing about the rolling is just very natural. It comes to you once you get faster at knowing the layout, But I think if you're mindful of it as you're learning this trigram tier, you're going to be able to take advantage and get that muscle memory of rolling to click in a lot quicker. Yeah, and just like the letters tier and the CPM module, this tier has the same features where it's got the progress bar there at the top in green, and you will want to go ahead through and type all of the trigrams until you can master all of them, and it's going to tell you that you can go ahead and move on to the next section, which is going to be words, and that's going to be the topic of the next video. I'm going to go ahead and complete this, and again I'll just show you what it looks like afterwards. Alright, I am done now with that tier, and so it's going to tell me, of course, to move on to the next module just like the last one, and so I could click that button and move on to the words, which again we will be focusing on that in the next video. Alright, so in this video we covered a lot of information. We started off by learning how trigrams are the building blocks of words and how practicing them can speed up your typing on a variety of different words. We then talked about muscle memory and some of the psychology behind it, and how to take advantage of spaced repetition to make your practicing really efficient. Finally, we went into the Trigrams tier on the CPM module on .io and explored techniques to practice while learning how to use our device. Now, for today's video's homework, I really want you to just take some time and practice on the Trigrams tier. It's not much different of a homework from last time, but I expect the Trigrams tier is going to take you a little bit more time. You know, the last one, it had a low speed goal. It was really just to learn the layout. There's only 26 letters. There's a lot more trigrams this time, so really just try to put in at least 30 minutes a day if you can in the Trigrams tier, and try to get through as much as possible. Even if you don't get through all of them, it's going to be okay to move on to the words tier and start to practice and play around with it there. I still go back to the Trigrams tier all the time to practice myself, so I challenge you to do the same. Thanks. See you next time.